Hi, and welcome to episode 94 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Instagram and also Ravelry. And today is Sunday, February 8th, 2015. This marks kind of one of the most fun knitting weeks I have had in a long time. I loved what I was knitting on, and so I can't wait to show you what's been on my needles. I've been completely and entirely glove obsessed. I showed you last week that I had started um, a pair of stranded colorwork gloves, kind of to replace ones that I knit a long time ago. And I actually looked up when I actually knit those, and it was in 1994. 20-year-old gloves. Yeah, I think I need a new pair. But this is the main thing that I worked on. So it doesn't look like it's that much, but I loved this project so much. I stayed up till 2 in the morning a couple nights just because I was having such a good time knitting it. And I would knit and I would rip and I would knit and I would change this, and it's just what I love to do. So if just as a recap, these were gloves to match this hat, which I knit a couple of years ago, and this is it's called the Garnet's Tam by Janine Bages. I did this as part of a workshop I took with her, but I did look up, and her the pattern for it is on Ravelry, and I'm just going to show you how this was using the same colors. So this is mine and this is hers. So just you can see sort of how completely different it is using just how you place the colors. So anyway, this was I had a lot of leftover yarn and I wanted to knit gloves. It was so much fun. So I have one completed. So this is my glove to go on, just so that you can sort of see, they're not exactly the same patterns, but they're using the same colors and sort of tried to use them in the same proportion. So I did that same kind of corrugated rib, and that kind of the same colors, and then did kind of like this big kind of Norwegian star in the middle, and I love them. So this is putting them on. So this is the back, and then on the other side they have just a small kind of stitch repeat pattern, and then the thumb is patterned like the fingers, except then on the back it's patterned like the palm. So I love them. But they were really fun to knit. So this is my first one, and this is my second one. As you can see, this one didn't get finished. I would have finished it because I was having so much fun knitting it, but I have about this much left of the Bordeaux, which is the darkest wine color, and then I have about this much left, that's unattached. So I don't have enough left to finish all the fingers and thumb on the second one. So it's not a big deal. It's not like it's a discontinued yarn or a discontinued color. This is Shetland Spindrift. I'm knitting these to about 9 stitches to the inch on a size 1 needle, which is 2.25 millimeter. And so I actually thought, well, maybe this is better because it's kind of easier to talk about it, and I can show you a couple things about what I do when I'm knitting these. And these are kind of based on gloves that I knit a long time ago, but then I have like changed a little bit as I've learned about what I like. So I'm a self-taught knitter. Um, but I've taken lots of classes and I go to knitting camp and stuff. But so when I was kind of newer at knitting, and even still now I do this, but I will try out, like if I, I'm knitting a pattern or I'm reading a pattern, I'll try out something. So as I learned to knit, I read lots of books, magazines and the articles in those and stuff. So that's how really I taught myself. So I would, if I was going to knit gloves or knit something, I would have the pattern. I would try out what they had, and then I would think, well, I don't really like this part of it, and I would figure out how to do it on my own, or I would say, I liked it how I did it on that last pair. I did better, and so I would take it out and do that. And so I kind of on all the sort of things that I've knit, on socks and mittens and gloves and sweaters and stuff. I've kind of figured out the way I like to do it. It might not be totally the most conventional way, but it's my knitting. So I hope that I would encourage all of you to like do that too, and don't be, so tied to, that's what the pattern says, and then not be happy with what you do. Try it out. If it's a new, something new, try it out and maybe you'll really like it. It's a lot of people seem to be doing that with socks and like trying to find their perfect socks and their perfect heel and toe. And that I always, I'm happy when I see like people on Instagram, posting stuff like that. But anyway, I do things kind of the way I like to do them, or I've learned to do them. Sometimes it might not be the sort of totally conventional way. Um, and one of those is when I am doing stranded color work. A lot of times you hear, or there's questions. How many stitches do you go before having to trap the yarn or having to, twist the yarn? Or I never, hardly ever trap yarn. Um, and one of the things is like this is, something that I put together. So, I put this big star in the middle of the back of the hand, and so that I don't have to go a long distance, a lot of stitches, stranding with a float of another color inside. You put these little kind of little doodads. It makes it look a little fancier, but that's not really what they're there for. It's so that I can go like to here, so I don't have to go from way the side all the way to the middle to have a float of yarn. I just go like to here, and so that automatically there are less stitches in between, um, having to, how far I have to take the second color. Now, like when I knit my boho sweaters, those sweaters, a lot of them, like in the wild apple, I think it was 17 stitches between colors. And a lot of those, there were pearls. And it's hard to catch a color to not have it show when you're working pearls. And so I just stranded it all the way across the back. You have to leave, a long enough float. And what I like to use when I am doing color work is I usually use metal needles, but for color work, I use bamboo needles or other kind of wood needles, ebony needles, whatever. And that little bit of drag, look, you can see how bent these are, um, how curved they are, because they're size 1. But that little bit of drag on the wood needles helps keep the stitches spread out so that the float stays long enough. So I don't really ever concern myself. Now on these, I did do it in a couple of places. I caught my yarn like from like here over to here. I did catch my yarn like on the side there because it's a glove and I didn't want, like when I put my hand in it, I didn't want my little finger to catch on that or a ring to catch on that or something. So I do make that kind of allowances. But kind of the general rule is an inch of stitches. So this is 9 stitches to the inch. So that would be nine stitches that you could go without securing a float. But anyway, so that is one thing that I do. Another thing is when I am, and a lot of times, when I'm doing kind of this kind of knitting, this is Shetland yarn, boho sweaters are merino angora, they're all going to felt down. So by the time you wear these a couple of times, all the floats are going to felt down. So it's not going to be a problem no matter what. Um, but because they're feltable yarn, what I always do is spit splicing is my friend. Because so this is the inside. I have, I still have my beginning, yarn tails attached. And so this just goes to show you, I don't have lots of, you're changing colors all the time, but I don't have lots of little ends. These ends are for something different, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But I don't have lots of ends so that at the end I have to weave in all those different colors as I've changed colors. Spit splicing is your friend, and use it because when you're going from this kind of darkest red to like a more medium red and then the lighter, it's not going to show if there's a few stitches with marled yarn. And I know I've said this before, but really it does not. But the only place that I would make an allowance, and it doesn't even look that bad here, is when I did this kind of this little pop, they call it like a little pop of color. That you can see like right there, there's like the little marled color on that one. Is it a big deal? On this side, it doesn't show because by then you've gone all the way around. If I really, that was a really big problem for me, I could duplicate stitch those first couple. I could do a little bit different, kind of a Russian spit splicey thing so that the color changed and I could make the color change in between there. It just didn't seem worth it to me at that point. So spit splicing is your friend. It takes a little bit longer as you are knitting because you can't just pick up a new color and just start to go. You have to, stop and split the ply off and felt it down. But at the end, you don't have lots of ends to weave in. And, these are gloves, so you have ends, 2 ends for each finger at the bottom, 2 ends for each finger at the top and stuff. So it took me about maybe 15 minutes to work all the ends on this glove when I finished it. So it would have taken a lot longer if I'd had to work on all those ends. And it's just not as satisfying when the side of it, has like kind of, those things hanging down and stuff. So there's that. And then I wanted to show you, this is how I choose to do my thumbs. Really almost all the time when I'm knitting mittens or gloves. And that is with a piece of scrap yarn, like you would when you're doing an afterthought heel. You work across the stitches with a piece of scrap yarn and then go back and work across them in pattern. So this can shows better probably. So this is the start of the thumb gusset, increasing for the thumb, go up a couple of inches and then did that little thumb trick. And then when I went back, I did the palm pattern across all the stitches. So then at the end, you just like an afterthought heel, come in, put stitches on your needle, and then they're live stitches, and knit them up. So I just find that gives kind of instead of casting off stitches and casting on stitches, or putting stitches on hold and then casting on stitches behind that, I just think it makes a nicer, the fabric of the the glove just has more give. But that's about it. Oh, and for knitting fingers, you know, I could do 2 circulars, you could do magic loop, but I have these little little double points. They're just wee little ones. They're 4 inches long. And these are, I got these long ago, and these are by Skacel. They have a nice little tip on them, and they're that coated kind of aluminum enamel kind of coated, kind of like the old Arrow needles, the old Inox needles were. And these date back probably 15-20 years too, because, and I have, this is a set of size 0s, and then I have another set that are size 1. The millimeters are 2.5 millimeters, because these were made in Germany, and I know Addie didn't even make 2.25 millimeter for a long time. So I don't have, I did these on 2.25 millimeters, so I don't have quite the exact match. So I went down to the 0s just because, especially the fingers, I want to be tighter probably than the hands, but they're not too tight to like get my fingers in. So anyway, if you hate knitting the fingers of gloves and you don't like to do like a magic loop, you know, with those few little stitches or 2 circs, you need to find yourself some of these little bitty glove knitting double points, because that's like part of the reason why when you're knitting the fingers of gloves and you've got, you know, these had like maybe 24 stitches, kind of average of like 24 stitches around, you know, divided by, you know, so you've got like 8 stitches on a needle and you've got like a long needle. It's just a pain, where it goes much quicker and faster with these little ones. So I highly recommend, if you're going to knit gloves on the fingers, on DPNs, to find yourself some of these. I have no idea if Skacel still imports these or if somebody else does. I know at one point I had a set of Brittany Birch that they all broke because they were wood and stuffs, and I never had those replaced. And after that, I found the little metal ones. So that was my big knitting project of the week. And like I said, I probably reknit this one maybe 4 or 5 times. Like I had the wrist done and I would knit up to here, and then I would think, oh, I want to change how these colors are, or then I would reknit, and then I would think, oh, but I think I wished I had, you know, one extra row of the light pink there, and I was like playing around with where to put this little pop color. You know, I tried it kind of at the bottom and the top, and so I did a lot of like kind of that playing around stuff, which I love. So, you know, but I'm happy these are set, and they go with all my coats, and all my sort of like big sweaters. So that was kind of the most of my knitting. I did do a little bit on one other project, and that is the Owls Reknit. So this is just as far as I go. I have this much left, so it does look like it's gone down a little. And really the only time I picked this up was when I did join in on Tuesday night. There's a VKN every 2 weeks for ZK, and I you know, joined. So when I joined in on that, I knit on this sweater just because it was knitting it on the round. So I did this. So that just goes to show it wouldn't take that much to get this done. I just don't like knitting it. So I think I was probably about here. So that was in about maybe 40 45 minutes. I joined in one room, and it was really fun to meet people. And then my computer, I kept getting like messages, your connection speed, la, la, la. And so I finally got like dropped off out of that one. And then I tried to join again, and it wouldn't let me. And then I tried to join a different one, and I was in there for like, I don't know, 3 minutes, and I got dropped out of that one. So I don't know if it's like something in that was like going on that night, or the connection speed, or anyway, I will try again. But it was fun while it lasted. But I will definitely try to do that again. It was just to at least get that done. I'm going to actually try to get the body of that, the owls, redone this week. And it was laying there, and I really like these with that, even if that has that little bit of that mint in there. So it's like they go with everything. So I will hopefully finish up the second glove this week. I'm going to order yarn. I took this class 3 years ago at Madronas, so I'm not even going to like try to get worry about matching dye lots or anything, because that was 3 years ago, and she uses this yarn for classes and things. So Maggot Schoolhouse Press carries Shetland Spindrift. It's a couple hours away from me, so I'm just going to order a skein from her, and it'll just, I think with the other colors, I'm not really that worried about dye lots or whatever. I will probably, when I call, I'll say, if you have this dye lot, I don't expect that they will, because it did come from there originally. So but hopefully it'll go out this weekend. I'll be able to finish the fingers, and then I'll have new gloves to wear. So that is kind of all that I have knitting wise for you. I don't have anything finished, but I will tell you, I'm wearing my featherweight cardigan by Hannah Fedek, and this yarn is Madeline Tosh Merino Light in the Posy color. I did do modifications to the pattern. Instead of I think it's originally, is it ribbed? That like this band, I did an old shale kind of pattern, and then I just have this little, I did kind of a cabled little cord, and just tie it shut, just because I always feel better. I don't kind of like those open front cardigans. And then it has 3/4 length sides, and then on the bottom of the sleeves and the bottom of the sweater, I did old shale also. I didn't do any spinning at all. In Imaginating, I am starting to think about kind of like a fun project to knit after the gloves are done. And I saw a picture. It's a new book. I don't think I'm going to buy it because I have a couple sources already, but I saw that there's a new book on twine knitting, or 2N knitting. This is the book that I have, and I got this a couple years ago, and I was going to knit a pair of mittens. I've never done the twine knitting, and so this is like pictures on the back of what it looks. So it makes a double thick yarn, or double thick fabric, but without doing like stranded knitting. And that was the other thing I was going to tell you about these. I have a sweater in the works that I am doing this on, but I didn't do it on these mittens. But there are a couple rows, like you can see, where there was just like a solid color row of, like down here, there were 2 solid rows, one here, and then, up at the top too. A lot of people, to make it the entire project, like, kind of the same, on those single colored row rounds, they strand the same color. So there would be this Bordeaux color, they would strand, two colors, every other stitch or every two stitches or whatever, so that the entire thing would be stranded. I do have a sweater. I'm kind of halfway through with Alice Starmore's Rona sweater, and I am doing it on that. But on this, I didn't think it mattered. And oh, the other thing is, so I'm knitting these gloves, and I had I did the orange gloves, and I put that little thread in so that you could use your iPhone or whatever. Completely forgot about doing that on these, so I'm going to duplicate stitch it, and it would match this color like totally. So I'll duplicate stitch it on this one and like actually knit it in on the other one. So I know I am glove obsessed. It has been this week, but it has been a really fun knitting week. I think if I ever go through a spurt like last summer where I didn't want to knit anything, somebody just needs to like shove gloves into my hands, like knit a pair of mittens. And so hopefully. So back to so kind of what I'm thinking about, that I'm going to like try. I don't know if I'm going to like it because a lot of people I know that have tried twine knitting don't really enjoy it, but I'm going to give it a try because it's like something I've never done before. And I did buy this a couple of years ago, when I got this book, and this is the yarn I'm going to use. It is Blackberry Ridge figurine. It is wool and silk, 75%, 25%, and this came right from, I went to, they always have an open house, and Blackberry Ridge is a mill that will, process fleeces, and then they have, their own yarn that they get or, use. And so anyway, this is what I plan on using for twined mittens. So maybe you'll see. I don't know. You'll see if I like it or not. I'm not sure. We'll see. But that is about all that I have. I hope you all have a really good week. And knit yourself some gloves. If you've never knit, I know so many people like really hate it. So that's why I think, I hear all the time, oh, people didn't like the twine knitting. And people always talk about they hate knitting gloves. Because at the end, you get gloves to wear. And I have been giving lots of thought, like, why do I live in the north? I hate the winter. I hate snow. I hate the winter. But this is why, because I love to knit mittens and gloves. I took a picture this week. I had all my, like the bin where all my gloves, I kind of kind of KonMari'd it so that they were all like, kind of on, on their side so that you could just see the tops of all of them in the bin instead of, I had always been just putting them in like this, and then they're like stacked on top of each other. And I took a picture of it and I put it on Instagram, and then I took it back down because I was thinking, I have there are so many of them. I was feeling guilty, like I wasn't trying to be like, look at me, I have all these mittens. But that is the reason why I knit them, so that I can wear them, and they keep your hands warm. And they're pretty, and and it goes fast. When I was a newer knitter, I was never much of a hat knitter. Hats are kind of a big deal now, but I never wore hats, so I never knit hats. But so I always had mittens and gloves, and that is kind of my reasoning behind buying a new coat or jacket or something is then I can knit new mittens and gloves to go with it. So, so anyway, I hope you all have a good week. And until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.